Today, over 50% of the world's population live in cities, and by 2050 this will have increased to 70% of the predicted 9 billion people living on planet Earth. The impacts this will have on our environment, economy and well-being are massive, and this makes urban design perhaps the most important area of design in the built environment today. But what is urban design? Well, fortunately or unfortunately, urban design is a little bit ambiguous. Is this urban design? Or is this? Is this urban design? Or is this urban design? The answer, of course, is yes. All of these things contribute to the design of our urban environments, which is essentially what urban design is. But while our cities have been designed for centuries, the activity of urban designers is a relatively new distinction of the 20th century. Urban design is defined succinctly by the New Zealand Ministry for the Environment as the design of buildings, places, spaces, and networks that make up our towns and cities and the way people use them. This definition extends from the metropolitan area as a whole down to individual buildings and urban interventions, and contains not just the built form, but the environmental, economic, social and cultural consequences of design. The broad nature of urban design becomes apparent when all the actors who contribute to urban design are considered. Architects, landscape architects, planners, engineers, developers, artists, lawyers, council and government officials are all what Mark Childs called urbanists. Childs relates urban design to jazz musicians, where he states, to play jazz it is necessary to master an instrument, but one must also learn to collaborate and improvise. This relationship to urban design means that Childs sees little distinction between an architect and a landscape architect urban designer, with each having to borrow and learn from the other professions. The other aspect of this analogy is the necessity for experts. The analogy is reflected by John Lang, who states that the problem urban designers face are too complex to be dealt with by individuals alone, and that for urban design guidelines to have plausibility in court, they will have to be based on expert knowledge, not personal whimsy. The urban design guidelines that Lang is referring to introduces us to the job title of urban designer, which Alex Krieger defines as the people who mediate between plans and projects, to translate the objectives of planning for space into mostly physical strategies to guide the work of architects, developers and other implementers. This is essentially the urban design guidelines, often produced by local or regional councils. In New Zealand, as well as many other countries around the world, there is no professional association for urban designers, like there is for architects or landscape architects, engineers and planners. There is no exam or necessary qualification to become and call yourself an urban designer. However, if you wanted to be employed by the Wellington City Council urban design team and work on those urban design guidelines mentioned earlier, you would need a master's degree in urban design or some previous experience in urban design. But the concept of professional urban design may be changing, where the New Zealand Institute of Landscape Architects is considering following their Australian counterparts and introducing the additional registration step to become a landscape architect/urban designer. Being only available to registered landscape architects in Australia, the AILA is encouraging their architecture and planning counterparts to introduce a similar additional registration step for their own members. But what about the other actors who participate in urban design? What is the risk of restricting the practice of urban design to an expert few? Lang states that when a design professional assumes the mantle of expert, their efforts are to promote a design in their tastes and values, a given what I want attitude on the part of the urban designer. The result of this model is written throughout history. At the other end of the spectrum is the designer as midwife, where the public become the experts of what their needs are, and the function of the urban designer is to simply assist the community to turn these ideas into a design. But this shares the same problem as the urban designer as expert had, where the knowledge of the public as expert is limited when acting alone. The most successful relationship is therefore seen as collaborative, like the jazz band that Charles described earlier. The urban designer is able to use their expertise in bringing users' attention to the issues of concern and listening assertively to their responses. But even this has the potential to go wrong with the best of intentions. Debate in Christchurch continues to revolve around the alleged top-down approach the government is taking toward the design of the central city and suburbs, disregarding or diluting the will of the community, a claim that is robustly denied by the minister responsible for the earthquake recovery as myths and nonsense. A different way of looking at urban design is given by David Sim, who has said, "I don't think by me drawing a line I can force anyone to do anything or be anyone. But we can make invitations. We can invite people to sit, to stay, invitations to a better everyday, a better way to cross the street, a better way to live your life. Urban design in this context is seen less a technical discipline than a mindset among those of varying disciplinary foundations, seeking, sharing, and advocating about forms of community. Professionally, urban design networks and advocacy groups working towards achieving this already, raising the question of whether a professional urban design association at this time is necessary for the achievement of good urban design. In conclusion, urban design is at the forefront of many global issues, and its practice involves a diverse range of people and professions. Collaborative urban design is seen as the best relationship between designer and community, where urban design is thought of as a mindset for advocacy towards a better environment to live in. To this end, a professional association may not be any more useful, while also carrying the risk of alienating urban designers outside of traditional professions.